All right, so what is emotional eating? You might say, oh, well, it's when I eat in response to emotions. And while that is true, emotional eating, we're going to split into three parts for the purposes of this course. Number one, emotional eating is restricting what you eat. Number two, letting go of that restriction to binge. And number three, the addiction to sugar and junk food. So we're going to talk about all of these things. But first of all, I want to make a couple of definitions. Number one, junk food. Now, we could all list junk foods and we'd have a varied list amongst all of us, and there'd be a lot of common denominators. Doritos, Cheetos, Chips Ahoy, Snicker bars, ice cream, these foods that are super tasty, that are full of chemicals, that typically are full of sugar or a combination of sugar and fat, things that actually have no nutritional value. But I want to also let you know that there is a category of junk food, which could be very healthy food like apples or almonds or steak, that if you eat it compulsively, if you use it to medicate a feeling, to you, that's junk food. So I have some foods on that list. A lot of people have some foods on that list you could think of right away. For me, apples can be a junk food. I love apples. They're super sweet. They're crunchy. I can eat probably 8 apples in one sitting. And then I feel awful. And I feel just as bad in my body as if I ate a box of donuts. So to me, apples are junk food. So I have to be very cautious about how I choose apples. So for the purposes of this course, I just want to remind you that I am mostly talking about processed foods and sugar, but it can also include foods that you eat compulsively. So just keep that in mind. Now, element of number one on this list, restricting your food. That's surprising to some people. How does that have something to do with emotional eating? Well, it's actually the meat and potatoes of emotional eating dysfunction. Because when we restrict our food, we are using willpower. We're saying, I'm not having that thing. I'm not having Doritos. I'm never eating Doritos. I can't have Doritos. Restricting that food implies that there is actually something good about that food that you're getting, but you're choosing not to have it. So willpower is something that you're going to stop using, because you're going to find out that willpower is not necessary in emotional eating ever again. Because when you restrict yourself from having those foods, it creates a desire to have it. You've actually put a spotlight on the fact you can't have it. It makes it even more desirable. Now, I'm sure you can relate to this when you say, I'm not eating popcorn. All of a sudden, you want popcorn. You see it, you smell it, you think about it a whole lot more, and you maybe even start to count the days till you can have it again. Or maybe you count the days since you've had it, and that number gets higher and higher and higher. You're using your willpower to stop eating something. That results in typically something happens where we let go of that restriction and we go nuts. So I gave up popcorn for a year one time. And on New Year's Day, the following year, I ate so much popcorn. I ate popcorn all day. I was so excited to finally have popcorn. So that year off popcorn, all it did for me was make me love popcorn more, and it made me fixate on it for a couple of months after that year. So emotional eating with willpower, restriction, and binging is not the solution. And then addiction to sugar and junk food. That's the other element to emotional eating. Do you ever binge on, carrots and celery and onions and maybe some garlic cloves? While we may binge on things that are healthy, most of the time it's something that is at least sweet, like for me, apples, or it's highly processed. And so we're going to talk about the addiction level of the foods that we choose with emotional eating. But it's important to note this topic of willpower. This whole entire course, we're going to talk about not needing willpower. Now, does it require willpower not to slap a police officer when he gives you a ticket? No, you're just not a person who would slap a police officer. Does it take willpower not to, scream at your mom when she says something to you don't really like as an adult? Or do you just simply not disrespect your mom? It's important to start this course by saying things as a part of your identity. So instead of saying like, I can't have Snickers, to say, I don't choose Snickers. So we're going to start with that verbiage through the rest of this course as well. And we're going to dig into all three components of emotional eating. We're also going to talk next about what emotional eating is, according to most people, the normal definitions of emotional eating. And you may find that this information resonates with you very, very closely.